આવે છે.
यशोदनन्दना व्रजजनरञ्जना यमुना तीरावनचारी यमुना तीरावनचारी जय राधा माधव कुञ्ज बिहारी जय राधा माधव कुञ्ज बिहारी जय गोपीजनवल्लभा जय गिरिवरधारी जायो गोपीजनवल्लभा जायो गिरिवरधारी। यशोदनन्दन व्रजजनरञ्जन यशोदनन्दन व्रजजनरञ्जन यमुना तीरावनचारी यमुना तीरावनचारी जय राधा माधव जय कुंज बिहारी। जय राधा माधव जय कुंज बिहारी। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Gokulananda Radha Gokulananda Sri Radhe Jaya Radha Gokulananda Radha Gokulananda Sri Radhe Jaya Sita Ram Lakshman Hanuman 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 Jaya Gauranita 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 Jaya Gauranita 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 Jaya Jaya Gauranita 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 Jaya Gauranita Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Nitai Gaur Premanande Shri Radha Gokulanand ki, Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman ki, Shri Gaur Nitai ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaur Bhaktivedanta ki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. So today we are reading from chapter 5, text 15. Nadate kasyachit papam. Nadate kasyachit papam. Nachaiva sukritam vibhu. Nachaiva sukritam vibhu. Ajnanena vritam jnanam. Ajnanena vritam jnanam. Tena muhyanti jantava. Tena muhyanti jantava. Nadate kasyachit papam. Nachaiva sukritam vibhu. Ajnanena vritam jnanam. Tena muhyanti jantava. Nadate kasyachit papam. Nachaiva sukritam vibhu. Ajnanena vritam jnanam. Tena muhyanti jantavaha. Nachaiva sukritam vibhu. Ajnanena vritam jnanam. Tena muhyanti jantavaha. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki. Nor does the Supreme Lord assume anyone's sinful or pious activities. Embodied beings, however, are bewildered because of the ignorance which covers their real knowledge. Wait, sorry, I forgot to do that word to word. Na, never. Adate, accepts. Kasyachit, anyone's. Papam, sin. Na, nor. Cha, also. Eva, certainly. Sukritam, pious activities. Vibhu, the Supreme Lord. Ajnanena, by ignorance. Avritam, covered. Jnanam, knowledge. Tena, by that. Muhyanti, are bewildered. Jantavaha, the living entities. Translation. Nor does the Supreme Lord assume anyone's sinful or pious activities. Embodied beings, however, are bewildered because of the ignorance which covers their real knowledge. Purport. The Sanskrit word Vibhu means the Supreme Lord is full of unlimited knowledge, riches, strength, fame, beauty, and renunciation. He is always satisfied in himself, undisturbed by sinful or pious activities. He does not create a particular situation for any living entity, but the living entity, bewildered by ignorance, desires to be put into certain conditions of life, and thereby his chain of action and reaction begins. A living entity is, by superior nature, full of knowledge. Nevertheless, he is prone to be influenced by ignorance due to his limited power. The Lord is omnipotent, but the living entity is not. The Lord is Vibhu, or omniscient, but the living entity is Anu, or atomic. Because he is a living soul, he has the capacity to desire by his free will. Such desire is fulfilled only by the omnipotent Lord. And so, when the living entity is bewildered in his desires, the Lord allows him to fulfill those desires, but the Lord is never responsible for the actions and reactions of the particular situation. which may be desired. Being in a bewildered condition, therefore, the embodied soul identifies himself with the circumstantial material body and becomes subjected to the temporary misery and happiness of life. The Lord is a constant companion of the living entity as Paramatma or the Supersoul, and therefore he can understand the desires of the individual soul as one can smell the flavor of a flower by being near it. Desire is a subtle form of conditioning for the living entity. The Lord fulfills his desire as he deserves. Man proposes and God disposes. The individual is not, therefore, omnipotent in fulfilling his desires. The Lord, however, can fulfill all desires, and the Lord, being neutral to everyone, does not interfere with the desires of the minute independent living entities. However, when one desires Krishna, the Lord takes special care and encourages one to desire in such a way that one can attain to him and be eternally happy. The Vedic hymns therefore declare, Esha uhe eva sadhu karma karyati tam yam ebhyo lokebhya uninishate Esha yu eva sadhu karma karyati yam adho ninishate. The Lord engages the living entity in pious activities so that he may be elevated. The Lord engages him in impious activities so that he may go to hell. Kaushitaki Upanishad 3.8. Agya janatur anishoyam atmana sukha dukha yo ishvara prerito gachet swargam vasva abhram evacha. The living entity is completely dependent in his distress and happiness by the will of the Supreme. He can go to heaven or hell, as a cloud is driven by the air. Therefore, the embodied soul, by his immemorial desire to avoid Krishna consciousness, causes his own bewilderment. Consequently, although he is constitutionally eternal, blissful, and cognizant, due to the littleness of his existence, he forgets his constitutional position of service to the Lord, and is thus entrapped by nescience. And under the spell of ignorance, the living entity claims that the Lord is responsible for his conditional existence. The Vedanta Sutras 2.134 also confirm this. Vaishamya nairigranye na sapekshatva tatha hi darshati. The Lord neither hates nor likes anyone, though he appears to. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaisnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunantanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parichana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada Ki. Firstly, I'd like to express my gratitude to Bhaktivedanta Manor for giving me an opportunity to share my reflections on the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 5, text 15. I would also like to ask for blessings from all the seniors who are upstairs, seniors who are present, my equals, and all the seniors who are behind the curtains dressing their lordships. that may I be able to share something of value. Hare Krishna. So I'll repeat the translation again. Nor does the Supreme Lord assume anyone's sinful or pious activities. Embodied beings, however, are bewildered because of the ignorance which covers their real knowledge. So this is a very significant verse in the Bhagavad Gita because Lord Krishna here is making clear that he just doesn't get involved in anything we do. Pious or impious, he is completely aloof from whatever activities we do. The verse starts with Nadate kashyatit papam and sukritam, nachaiva sukritam. So papam, impious activities, sukritam, pious activities. From both the activities, Krishna never accepts na adate. Adate means to accept, na adate means to not accept. So he just doesn't assumes anyone's sinful or pious activities. So then we may wonder that why are we doing these pious and impious activities in the first place? What makes a jiva, the soul, to do these activities in the first place? And that's the third line of the verse. It comes from ajnanena, that comes from ignorance. That's because we have forgotten our original position of being the servant of the Lord. And because we are in ignorance, we are covered by it. Our natural, eternal, blissful knowledge is covered by ignorance and maya. And because we're in maya, we try to act in different ways, which can be pious and impious. So one may argue that when a devotee comes to Krishna consciousness, his pious and impious activities get taken away by the Lord because he surrenders. But in this section of the Bhagavad Gita, particular section, Krishna is establishing certain guidelines for the karma yogis. So he hasn't established bhakti yoga just yet in the whole scene of the Bhagavad Gita. So he's just talking about how a karma yogi acts and how karma works, and then how he doesn't get involved in anyone's good or bad karma. So, by ignorance, most of the material world is functioning under the ignorance that they are the enjoyer, and they are engaging in activities which are self-destructive, self-serving. There's no question of being selfless. And these activities lead to their happiness and distress, which keep them entangled in this material world for eternity until they come into contact with Krishna consciousness through their pious activities, or if they come in contact with the devotee. So this ajnana, this ignorance, how can we define ignorance? Actually, I was researching and then I found out that we can define ignorance in different ways. First of all, ignorance can be defined as lust. As Krishna talks about in chapter 3, towards the end of chapter 3, that it is lust only, Arjuna, which is the cause of one's downfall in this material world. So one way of defining ignorance is lust, that one is acting under lust. The propensity to enjoy something, the propensity to enjoy your significant other, propensity to enjoy an object, or propensity to just generally have that enjoying mentality in you that, okay, I am the enjoyer and everyone is meant to serve me. Another way of describing ajnana is false ego and arrogance, because we are covered by false ego. We were learning in Bhakti Shastri that false ego, the covering of false ego is the heaviest covering in the material world, and is the 10 times of the covering of all the coverings which are subsequent to it. So because we all are covered by false ego, we tend to think that we are the highest and we try to be the Lord, when instead we are meant to serve the Lord. And ajnana can also be expressed in terms of 3 modes, because the 3 modes are still under the material nature: passion, goodness, and ignorance. So when we make decisions under these 3 modes, it's still influenced by ignorance as a whole. So, and this ajnana is the reason why the soul forgets who he actually is. what's the purpose of life? And very few people try to inquire about the subject matter, which is the most important subject matter to the soul: who he is, what's his eternal position, why is he in this material world, is there something beyond it, and all these other questions. So this verse talks about how Krishna is not involved. There is a story which Brajbahari Prabhu narrates. He was basically describing that a lot of people from India, they apply for visa in America for students, especially students like, so 40,000 applicants, they apply for a visa, American student visa, but only like 4,000 or 5,000 of them actually get selected for the visa process. Now all 90,000, 40,000 or whatever the number was, they all had the same application. They all applied, they all did their best. But only a few number of those applicants actually got the visa. Everyone put in the same effort, but only a few got the result. Now we could say that who's responsible here? What went wrong? What was completely dependent on luck? But no, it's completely dependent on the person who's sanctioning the visas. And the person who's sanctioning the visas, he has nothing to do with the applicants. He doesn't know them personally. He can get nothing out of them. But he sanctions the visas based on certain factors, certain merits. So similarly, the Lord acts in a similar way, that the jiva desires to do something, and then the Prakriti facilitates it in the form of different modes, either in the passion or goodness or ignorance. And then the Lord, according to his merits, he sanctions the desires of the living entity. So we can see that there are three principal factors involved: the desirer, who is the jiva, then the doer, who is the Prakriti, who facilitates, and then the Supreme Lord, who is the sanctioner. So we can say that in all our karma, these three factors are needed. If the jiva doesn't desire anything, the Supreme Lord doesn't have anything to sanction. Prakrite kriyamanani gune karmani sarvasa ahankara vimuratma karta hamiti manyate. The spirit soul, bewildered by the three modes of material nature, thinks himself the doer of activities, which are in actuality carried out by three modes of material nature. So one may present this verse and say that if these modes are actually carrying out everything, then how is the jiva responsible? Because the modes are actually acting under the Supreme Lord. So if the modes are acting under the Supreme Lord, then how come the Lord is not responsible as a whole? But then the Lord in this verse, he clearly says that he is not involved in anyone's pious or impious activities. So we see that it all depends on the desires of the jiva, and then the desires of a jiva lead him to either heaven or hell or to the spiritual world. And the quality of our desires, it shapes our future. Whatever we desire, things we desire, we start to act in those ways. We start to plan our life in those ways. Say if one wants to become a footballer as his long-term goal, so he'll start associating with fellow people who are good in football. He'd go to play in the fields every Wednesday or Thursday. We have a group. I had to exit that group, actually. It was too many notifications. So yeah, you would associate with similar like-minded people according to the desire you have. So having the right desire is very important, because we tend to direct our life in that way. We tend to think in that way, associate in that way, which affects our consciousness, and then our happiness and distress comes from those desires. But at the end of the day, all these material desires, they keep us entangled in the material world. So we need that change, we need that shift in our consciousness to change our desires from material to spiritual. So, what do we desire actually? I mean, this topic is personally just very relevant to me. It's been a very purificatory period recently, and I could see that the living entity desires, and then the main factor in every desire is happiness. That is just looking for some kind of happiness. And because having a desire assures the living entity of some kind of happiness, that if he fulfills this desire, it will give him some happiness. That's why we keep desiring things, different things, even though they might be very very hypothetical or like out of the blues, out of the picture. But because the living entity starts to imagine these things in his head before, that, oh, this is how the picture will look if I fulfill this desire, he starts to act in that way. He starts to pursue those desires, regardless if the desire is good for his spirituality or his just general growth. But the true happiness lies in Krishna consciousness, as we all know. So we have to change our desires in wanting Krishna instead of wanting material things, material benefits and material happiness. And then Krishna says that one who desires him, he actually gives intelligence by which he can come to him. Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam pritipurvaka tadami buddhi yogantam yena mamapiyanti te. So Krishna helps us dovetail our desires by giving us the Shastras. When we have the knowledge, just like the Bhagavad Gita we get to know who we are, what's our eternal position. And in that way, because we have established our true identity, we will start to desire in the right way, in the right consciousness, for the right thing. And this is Krishna's causeless mercy. That's his kindness, because he loves all of us. Based on our pious credits or based on the mercy of a devotee, his pure devotee, when we meet them, he gives us intelligence by which we can come to him. And thus that helps to end our entanglement in this material world. These desires, they only give us distress when they're not focused on Krishna, because when we try to enjoy independently of Krishna, the happiness which comes out of it is only temporary. As you must have seen, if you go to a club or if you start drinking or smoking, the effect is just lasts for a few minutes. And because it's temporary, right after that, we experience a lot of distress, regret. Then we try to make ambitions and reformations, and then a few weeks later we are back at the same activity, and then we keep doing these activities because we are desiring for the wrong thing. We are desiring to enjoy separately from Krishna. That's why it's important to surround ourselves in the association of devotees. Devotees who have realized that we are not the body, we are the soul, and that we are the servants of Krishna. By seeing them, we were just with Ananta Gopal Prabhu outside before this class, and he was mentioning that just by being with the sadhus, you learn how to be. You'll start noticing things, you'll start picking up on little things. So just by an association of sadhus, we can change our desires, transform our desires by getting inspired through them, by serving them. One way to have spiritual desires or spiritual qualities is by serving that particular person with those desires and the spiritual qualities. Because when you start serving that person, you automatically will start having those desires and qualities in you as well. One example is of Manthara from the Ramayana, that because she wanted to be the top maid servant, and then she didn't want to drop down from a position, she started manipulating Kaikeyi into getting these two boons from Maharaj Dashrath, to send Lord Rama away and give Bharat Maharaj the kingdom. not just because of her desire to enjoy by herself, to enjoy her position for her own sense gratification. It gave distress to so many people. So many people. Lord Ram had to go away. Dashrath had to be in so much separation. Mother Kaikeyi, Mother Kaushalya, Lord Mother Sita, Lakshmana, all these people, the whole family got in distress just because of one sense enjoyment desire from mantra. So we can see that how our desires also influence people around us. How a desire of a particular individual, when they're trying to manifest it, we can feel the energy, we can feel that consciousness just affecting our minds. So that is why it's really important to live in a conducive environment. So that's why Prabhupada says you should accept what's conducive to Krishna consciousness and reject what's not. So this also applies to the association of people who have the same desires as you, because that will help you in progressing in Krishna consciousness. I think the class is supposed to come to an end, so I'll just end with this paragraph from Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada says in response to someone saying that when we desire, Srila Prabhupada is answering in the context of to first deserve and then desire. Srila Prabhupada replies that you have to be qualified by your karma to get a certain body. Now whatever Krishna wants he can do, but you are not independent like him. You are dependent on nature and your position is very insignificant. But Krishna can, as soon as he wishes, immediately do anything. This is also mentioned in the Bible. God said, "Let there be creation." And there was creation immediately, but you cannot do that. You may desire something, but nature will supply you according to what you deserve. Whatever you deserve, you will receive from the material nature. You may desire something, but at the same time, you may deserve something else. So we say, first deserve, then desire. Srila Prabhupada ki. Questions, comments, corrections? Hare Krishna, Abhay Prabhu. So just for the online viewers, Abhay Prabhu asked this question that for karma yogis, Krishna doesn't get involved, but in Bhakti yogi's life, Krishna is fully involved because he gives intelligence of how one can come to him. And his question is that how can we know that Krishna is involved in our life as a Bhakti yogi, right? Okay. Thank you for your question. That's a very good question. This is a question I'm also looking an answer for. But from my understanding, what I've understood is that one way to know that what Krishna wants is by approaching his senior servants, senior disciples. So if you go to seniors, one thing I do in my personal life is I go to 3 seniors, and the question I have, the problem I have, I tell them the same problem in the same way, in the same perspective. And if they give me the same answer, the same reply, or like along the same lines, then I take it as Krishna's decision or Krishna's reply that, okay, this is what Krishna wants me to do. That's one way to know that Krishna is involved in your life, through the association of the seniors. And it's also through the mercy of the spiritual master. The spiritual master is also the direct representative of Krishna. His words are non-different from Krishna, so whatever instructions the spiritual master gives is in a way what Krishna wants us to do. So following the instructions of the spiritual master is also an indication that Krishna is involved in your life. He's giving you some particular instructions. If if you don't have a spiritual master, our local temple authorities act as um, Krishna contact. So if you're listening to them, if you're listening to the instructions, how they want us to function, we can see that Krishna is involved in our lives. Some vapu ways, some direct, some really obvious ways to see if Krishna is involved. But Krishna is the Lord, He can do anything. So He may show some favor to the devotee, He may give some glimpses of His Leela in giving you some nice pastimes with Him in the Dham or with the devotees, when you feel a lot more attraction towards the Lord, when you feel a lot more when you have a lot more faith in the Lord, some things which increase your faith in the Lord, then you can see with those pastimes, those experiences, Krishna is involved in your life and He's trying to get you closer to Him. Srila Prabhupada ki, Granth Raj Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki.